Hello everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Low-Code Cafe, episode 68. Last time we started on this journey of replacing a legacy application, and today we are going to continue on that, which will be the largest part of this webinar. But before that, let me introduce myself for the new faces here. My name is Bogdan Litescu. I'm the founder and CEO of Plant an App. And this Low-Code Cafe, it's a weekly event, a community event. So a lot of technical content, a lot of hands-on development. It's not scripted, so we keep it to a minimum. So it's the hands-on real developer experience. We do it every week. We accept guests. So if you want to present, reach out to us, and we'll be happy to host you. As you notice, this event is being recorded, and all past editions are on our YouTube channel. So make sure to visit, subscribe, and browse. We have 67 hours of video just in this series, but there are other training videos as well in there. So make sure to subscribe. For today, we have an easy agenda. I will take the time to give you some highlights about the release that's happening currently, but also about the upcoming release. And afterwards, we'll have Dale Warner, our head of support, giving us the hands-on low-code development part 2 of replacing a legacy system with Plant an App. Eager to see this new episode. Okay, so just a quick overview of where we are with the current release. So 1.17, right now we are in beta. We've also started this beta program. So thanks everyone that got involved into the program. And we have a community section built for the beta tester to record the feedback from the testing. And the beta is out there. So there's the change log, it's on that portal, and the new versions that can be tested both on-premise and on our infrastructure. So everything is set. We've already started upgrading our systems to 1.17, and everything worked fine so far. The console is already 1.17, the Plant an App website and so on, they are already on 1.17. So we are doing this before releasing it publicly. We update all our systems to make sure that it works in real world environments as well. So yes, this is happening, and I mean, initially we had this November 17th as the scheduled date for the release. We postponed the beta for a couple of days, so we might postpone the release as well. But I guess we'll know more by the end of the week and beginning of next week if that's really needs to happen. And next one, we've already started working on 1.18, and the major theme of this release will be again the UX improvements. So you'll notice in 1.17 we rewrote some of the screens like automation, and we'll continue to revamp all the other screens like API, the APIs screens, the training screens, and maybe we even get to the search screens and so on. But the biggest item for us in 1.18 is taking the first steps towards upgrading our UI to Bootstrap 5. So let's say the end user facing UI to Bootstrap 5. So that's a big milestone for us. It will probably not be completely done in 1.18, but at least we'll have a big chunk of it that will likely be used behind the scenes in the admin area. So features like pages or a SQL console that depend on these UI components. They will already use the new theme, while on the front end, it will probably take another release until we get there. But yes, a big milestone. I know that this has been asked for quite some time, and I'm happy that we are finally getting there. And besides that, we'll also continue with cleaning up the actions. So, in 1.17, I mentioned that we renamed some of the folders. like the list and objects folder that was previously named entities, and many other different folders. And we'll continue on this pattern to clean up those folders to make them more compact and easy to find the actions. So yes, this will be again a big next release, and I'm looking forward to it. So that's the update from me, unless there are questions.
I don't see questions yet, but I'm sure if anybody has any, feel free to enter them and we'll address them before the end of the session.
Sounds good. Then I will let you drive it later.
Great. Hello, everyone. Okay, so exciting things today. Part 2 of Low Code in No Time, updating our legacy application. And so let's just a quick reminder on what we tried to accomplish. We're rebuilding a legacy application, something that was that I had familiarity with, but came into existence 15 years ago. And then also we want to use and demonstrate as many of the built-in low-code features as we can, so that it just kind of compresses the knowledge into a couple of videos and can be used to help bring new people along, or if you need a refresher on a particular topic. So we're trying to do that as well. But first, before we get into discussing what we've accomplished, where we're going, but first we upgrade. So in our environment, we're working on this LCC 67, Low-Code Café 67 environment that we worked on last week. I'm going to go into the configuration and updates, and I have my system. I don't have my system set up for upgrades. I cannot believe I did that. Okay, so I guess we're not going to upgrade. So we'll talk about that. The upgrade process, I guess I'll mention it. The upgrade process 1.1.17 is available. There's a button, you click it, it installs all the software in one click. Very good, smooth experience for our users. And just in terms of just general advice, always good if you have the ability to have a backup in advance of doing that, in case anytime you install something, things can go wrong. We work very hard to keep them from going wrong, but having a backup so that you can restore, or even better, if you have the ability to do that upgrade on a clone. And these are the kinds of things that we make available to clients of our hosting. But I've actually run this upgrade against our clone and of the site, and it worked very well. I just didn't set up where I could see the button. So we'll do that perhaps next time. Okay, so throw that slide away. So next we have, this is the application that we are rebuilding. It's called Sales Logics, and we focused in on some key parts of this that we're going to do, and we got a great deal of it done. So last time in our 45 minutes or so, we worked on rebuilding the back end, doing some working with data entities and the management kind of create, read, update, delete. We refer to that sometimes as CRUD, just the standard screens that you have to do to interact with your data, but these aren't the front end screens. Unless if you need a true front end, then we'll work on developing that. And I hope to get into that next week. We've already got some feedback that there's interest in how do we go about building the front end, hiding the management screen. So we'll get into that in detail in the next week and perhaps beyond. We'll see. So we also worked on converting our contact information, our email and web information with the type and status that appear in this. I've actually got a screen down here that shows the areas that we worked on. So we've done all of these, but we haven't done the notes and history. And there's a lot more to this app. We're not going to be able to replace everything. This was many years of development on the part of Sales Logics, but we've done a significant amount in just an hour. So I think we're demonstrating the power of low code. So we're going to continue on that notes and history area. So we got the contact information, email and web, type and status done. And we also did related phone numbers. We're going to work a little bit more in that area as well. So today we had planned to do the version upgrade to 1.17. I fell down on that one. And then we're going to continue on data management. We're going to add those that notes history, which I'm just going to call activities. We'll also activate the search product, and we'll start adding some logic to our application. So here we go. In the notes history, every contact can have, the idea is that you want to keep up with what is going to happen for a given contact, like you're going to have a meeting or a phone call or need to send an email. And then you also want to keep up with what has happened. So once it's in the past, it becomes part of the history of that contact. So that's just kind of basic customer relationship management or CRM functionality. So we're going to build that, and it's going to look something like this. But we have some lists that we're going to want to put in. Just as we did last week, we want to standardize on some of this information. So we're going to have an activity type that falls into one of these 4 categories. And we can add more categories, but these are the beginning ones we'll do. And then there's going to be a result. Is it a completed activity, a pending activity, maybe a draft of an activity? And so we'll be creating 2 tables to 2 entities to deal with that. And then we will build the actual activity entity as well that takes advantage of that and link it to our contact. So let's see how far we can get in our application today. So this work is being done in entities, and I'm going to start by adding a new entity and actually adding a new namespace. And then a namespace that I'm creating is called activity. This is going to allow us to group everything having to do with activities together and find them a little bit more easily. So we select this new activity area, and we're going to create something called activity type. And we also need a plural, so that's activity types. We are going to want to display this in our maintenance menu. And the page for that is in setup, and we're going to put that under setup for accounts as well. So it's just a general place to put it here for now. We can move this around after the fact. And this is going to have just one property, the name. So we add a name property and say that it is the display name, which automatically gets us that it's required and searchable. And I like to make things sortable. So I'm not dealing with the permissions as yet, but that's there too. We're just going to accept the default permissions and say save. So that's one list that we're creating. And so now that we have activity types, we can use the view page in new tab button and go and put some test data into it. So the test data that we're doing for activity type is phone call, meeting, to do, and email. In the feedback to last week's webinar, there was a question about importing data and maintaining referential integrity. And so that is a topic that we hope to touch on in the weeks to come as well. But for now, we're just doing a kind of a manual conversion, manual rewrite, not necessarily supporting any data that already existed. So here we go. We're going to have phone calls, and meetings, and email. So those are our 4 activity types, and so we have those entered in. And the next thing that we're going to do is another entity also in this activity namespace that is going to be activity result. And I'm going to put it underneath that same contacts page. Continue. Again, it only has one property, the name, and it is the display name. So we'll save that. And now, and again, just to kind of quickly show that we're using, since we have the namespace enter, the activity namespace, if we choose that, now we can focus in on just things that are in that namespace, the activity namespace. And so in the same way, we can go to that page, enter some of our test data. So the first one is complete. We'll also add pending and trapped. So in just short order, we've added a couple of tables, and so now we're ready to use that and generate this the data structure and a maintenance screen for doing activities. And in SalesLogix, notes and history were separated at the table level from activities, and so things were entered as activities, and then once they were completed, they became part of the notes history. I didn't really like that structure, and so we're just putting everything into something called activities and giving it a status. So we're doing a little bit of redesign on the fly, not just copying what was there. So the next thing we're going to do is something in the activity namespace called activity. Activities, and this is also going to be displayed in the menu. It's going to be connected to the contacts as well. So because it's something that is subordinate to the contact. And so now we can add some properties. So if we look at, we're going to have this type, this scheduled date, the user and contact name is going to happen for us automatically. You'll see that that happens, the result and the description. So these are the fields that the properties that we need in our entity. So the first one we're going to do is description. That'll be a text. We will also have the scheduled date when this thing was planned to happen. And this is going to be a local date and time. We will also have a type, and this is, we're going to use our entities and make it be a activity type. So that'll automatically create some logic to trigger, to allow that to come from a drop down and force it to be standardized. Then we're also going to do a result. That will also be an entity of type activity result. And finally, details. Details we're going to make be a large text so that lots of information can be provided. And the display name that we're going to do for this is description. So we pick description for that. I'd like to make everything sortable. We'll work through this here real quickly. We can sort anything on the screen. And if we want to filter out for things like these standardized, the details doesn't make sense to filter because those are going to vary from everyone. But results and types can be filtered. And scheduled dates are going to be of a particular time. And so that's not going to be terribly useful. But we can make dates and types and results and even the details searchable. So that's interesting. And again, we're skipping permissions on this one. We're just going to accept the default permissions. So now we have the ability to open that out, and we can potentially, I clicked the wrong button, so we'll try that again. We needed activity. And so we can potentially create an activity, and when we do, it automatically lets us pick a calendar date and time from that because of the way we set it up. The types come from our related types. The results come from our related results. We can type in a long description. So we have activities, and now it's time to relate that to our contacts. So if we were to go to our contact and just add a new property called activity. Activities, and the type is a list of activities, there it is, list of activities. So this will allow us to create many activities for one contact. And so this is very similar to what we did with phone numbers last time. So we save that, and override the results. And so now let's see what we get. When we go to contact, and if we were to open that screen here, we have everything we had last time: the name, the account that they're related to, their title, their assistant, email, things that are clickable and active, their type, but and the phone numbers, which we had last time, and the ability to launch off and go see their phone numbers. But now we have activities. And so for our, if we were to take a look at John Abbott, and this is, you can see very old test data, but he had a meeting back in 2007 with Lee Hogan, and it was a complete, and it was a dinner meeting. So we could enter some test data that looked something like that. So we'll go to his activities and add a new activity, and it's going to be a dinner meeting. We'll make it be something coming up in the future, 7 p.m. And this is a meeting, and it is pending. It hasn't happened yet, and we're going to call it the birthday dinner. So this gets us, we've seen this standardized data, the details of it. Let's say we also wanted to send him an email reminding that we're going to get together. So we can also, we can add another activity that is a reminder email and say that we wanted to send that yesterday. We picking yesterday for a reason. But let's say we wanted to go out yesterday at noon. It's a email, and I'm going to start it out as a draft email because I'm going to write the email. So, John, could be far more involved in that, but just to demonstrate. So we've created a draft email. We'll work with that in a little while, but as we start to get into the logic. But I just wanted to demonstrate, for example, that our filtering works. So if we turn on filtering, we can focus on emails, or we can focus on meetings, focus on different types. In our search, we've automatically got, if we type birthday, we see the birthday dinner show up. So we've got searching and filtering and sorting all active. If we want to click on result, we can sort it in order by column. So lots and lots of functionality built in all automatically. So that gets us through this. We can record things that are coming up in the future, things that have happened in the past. I forgot to mention behind the scenes, since the properties of an activity are, and we've kind of ignored them, but they're system properties: who created, who modified it. So the creation and modified is a user. So this is automatically being tagged to me because I'm logged in as we come in. So we have a user associated with these. We could, if we wanted to more explicitly say a user, we could add a type of user as well. But user is part of this information already. So if create user is sufficient, we can do that, or we can say responsible user, something like that. But we'll not dig into that now. So we have the things that are on this screen, the ability to record and query into this information. So in looking at this, I'm going to go back to our screen and take a look at our contacts. And so now we see on John Abbott, we have 2 activities, and you can drill in, either click in and find his leave this screen or do it in a new window, but we can go in and see those activities. We can go in and see those phone numbers. So one final thing I'll mention before we go on is that if we go back and take a look at the contact dependency view, this will kind of show how everything that we put together last week and just now, how it all kind of goes together. So if we look at the dependency view, we can see that contact uses phone numbers and activities, and that accounts and contact types and contact statuses are entities that refer to contact. And it's interesting, you can change your view. So if we wanted to see how activities are being used, we could click in and see that Activities are used in contacts. They are related to types and related to results as well. So if you want to visualize how this information is going together, this relationship, this dependency view, it can be very useful in that way. Great, so let's move on. So this is what we've got accomplished so far. And so now we're going to start into the next topic. We're going to activate search. So there's a little bit of setup that's necessary to activate search, not much, but we'll show you how that works. The first is that you want to tell search that it's okay to search a given entity. So when perhaps not everything is sensible to search on, but other things are. So we'll set the searchable property and enable indexing. And then we'll get into the search product and do some manual indexing and some testing. Oop, I don't know what jumped on me, but here we go. So let's take a look at contacts. If we go into if we edit the contact, indexing is not currently enabled, but we're going to want to turn that on. This is saying that anybody, if you want to do a global search for a contact name or type or any of the information in contact, this will put it into the global search. And so by default, that's off, but just clicking it on, that becomes available to people searching. And then the other thing is that this searchable column controls what gets put into the index as well. So if you don't want to be able to search by assistant's name and you turn that off, they will not be part of the search. If you turn it on, they will be. So that's kind of that's what's required to turn on search. So we'll save that change. And then the other thing that then you give some consideration to what about these other things? This activity result table that looks like this, it's just a master table, complete pending draft. This isn't very good information to return in a search, so we're not going to go in and turn that on. So it's just the things that that we think might be useful. I'm going to go in on the activity and turn on indexing for that, and then take a look at our properties, and we see that we have lots of things that are searchable already, so we're all set there. So contacts and activities. And I guess probably the other one that we should consider is accounts. If you want to search by account name or the information that's in account, that's worth turning on as well. So we'll turn that on. And properties, it's already searchable, so we'll do that. So we're going to get some data put into the search, but not things that don't make any sense. So let's now, let's see, here, we're activating search. So we did the entity setup, enable indexing, setting searchable property. Next step is to try out the search. Now, search happens automatically on a regular schedule, but sometimes you want to accelerate that, especially if you're testing or if you don't have a lot of data. Search can take a long time to run. If you have a site that has lots of information, I'm sorry, I'm going to clear the index here and force it to index. So I say index. Notice that Plant App Indexer entities indexer had 0 entries before. If we've done this right, and once it succeeds, we'll have some data there. But this tells, what I was saying is if you have a lot of files on your site, a lot of PDFs or Excel documents or whatever kind of documents that you have, and you turn on indexing for them, it might take a long time to, some people have thousands and thousands of documents. It might take a long time to re-index. However, once an index is complete and built, that it only refreshes. New information gets added every 10 minutes or so. So you don't really have to do this manual indexing, but because we're trying to do it real time today, I cleared the index and then forced it to manually re-index. So now we have 7 indexer entities in here, and we can test the search right here. So if we look for Abbott in our search, we can see that we get Abbott Limited, which is an account, and John Abbott, which is a contact. So our search is active and has the ability to test it here. If we were to go this, what we've activated is this general search capability up here. So if we look for in the search bar and search, so now it's found Dale Warner, head of support, and if we were to click on the link, it'll take us right there. Now again, this is pointing to the default these maintenance screens, and so we might want to do some control about whether or not we want these included in our search. But for now, this is useful. It's going to allow our team to be able to locate things within our database. And let's see if I've done this right. If we were to do birthday, that was part of the data that was searching. We have our dinner meeting, and we have a link to that. So search has been activated, and going back to that again, it required that we do a manual. We turn on the search capabilities through enable indexing, and then the first time doing a manual index because we wanted it to happen right away, we did that, and now we can test it. So that's search. So that now we start getting into the logic. What more can we do with this? So talking about, this is something that came up when we were working last week about phone numbers and the way it was being displayed, and maybe we wanted to display it a little better. So the problem that we identified was that phone numbers are related records through that list of entities, and they're visible only by clicking through. So let's see what that means. If we go to our contacts and look at John Abbott, we have 5 phone numbers. You can't see what the phone numbers are. And if you want to see the phone numbers, you click them and click through, and they're shown here. And these are clickable, assuming you had an application that knew what to do with them. You could click, and it would try to open the to make a call. But select from a mobile device. But it's a little bit inconvenient that you have to click through and wait for the screen to refresh. So if your scenario was that you wanted it to display right here, it's a programming task. It's not a terribly complex one, but it is a programming task, and we're going to work with that, attack that here. So that's the problem. The discovery, we're going to accomplish this by doing some SQL. And so the first problem is learning how contacts and phone numbers are related. And then once we understand that, we're going to build a solution that it's a couple of steps in the solution, but once you build it, it can be used in any number of places. What we're going to end up with is a token that can be placed anywhere within that where a specific contact is being identified. Like we'll be able to put the token here in this column, and it's going to show the phone numbers for everyone. You'll also be able to use it in other places. So now we're into we're going to do the steps. We'll build a workflow. We're going to make the workflow accessible anywhere as a token, and then we're going to embed it. And looking at our time, yeah, it's probably a little aggressive in what we'll get done today. This is probably how far we're going to get done. I see there's been some questions and some answers on the chat, so that's great. And I guess before I forget, I'm going to post on the chat the links for this episode. So sign up for Campfire, give us some feedback. That's on there now. So let's do this discovery. Use the SQL console to learn how contacts and phone numbers are set up. So on the left here, we look and see that SQL console is not available. But if we go into general, there is a setting, if you have the rights to do it, to enable the SQL console. So if you turn that on and hit save, then SQL console is going to show on the left-hand side. This is going to let us do some exploration. So when we click this, what you see is the area to do a SQL query. You can also have saved SQL queries if you come up with something that you want to repeat. But over here on the right, it shows us our entities. Most of the entities all the entities that you might create in your app begin with the letters app, APP. When you, there's a few that are useful that we also reveal, like files and roles and users, but we're not going to focus on them today. So we were interested in how contacts go together and how phone numbers go together. And the join table that gets created automatically for you is this one. It's a little bit of an awkward name, but it's contact, phone number, phone numbers. So this is the join, and so we'll take a look at the let's take a look at what it looks like on the front end before we dig in on the back end. So John Abbott is contact ID number 3. And if we were to look at his phone numbers, I'm going to do that in a new window so we can see what that looks like. His phone numbers, he's got 5 of them, and they're all IDs 1 through 5. If you were to look at we have no other phone numbers. I should enter some so that we can see what that looks like. So I'll enter one for me. My work number, and that's my preferred number, and say add. So if I now go back and refresh the screen, we can see that I have one phone number, and if I go off and look at it, this is a phone number with an ID number 6. So if you're looking at me, we should get 1 phone number back. If we're looking at John, we'll get 5 phone numbers back. He's got 1 of them that's preferred. So these are all the phone numbers and displays that we want to show in our app. So how do these go together? If we look at the SQL console, and we can, you can click on this it'll copy the table name, the entity name. So I'm going to just be able to paste that then. If we select everything from contact, we see that we have ID of 1, 2, 3, and this is John Abbott. Here is the full name, and so John Abbott number 3. So that's kind of that's the IDs that are in that table. If we were to look at phone numbers and select star from phone number, we see that we have phone numbers, not a lot of identifying information. We have when it was created and all, but we have the phone numbers here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there isn't, we've learned where the phone numbers are, but we haven't learned how they go together. And that's what this table is. So let's take a look at that one. And so select star from app, contact, phone number, phone numbers. And now we can see that contact ID number 1 is related to phone number ID number 6. And contact 3 is related to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is the join table that will get us from a contact to all their phone numbers. And so what we're going to be interested in, like if we're going to do demo, we're going to pay attention to John Abbott. We would be interested in knowing for example, where contact ID equals 3. If we're focused on John Abbott, we were going to want all his phone numbers. So this gets us the IDs of all his phone numbers. And there's other ways to do this, but I'm just trying to keep it as straightforward as possible. This is the research. This is the discovery that needed to happen. How do we get John's phone numbers? So we've got that. I'm going to put it on my clipboard and use it here in a little bit. So we've gotten through the discovery. And so the next question is building a solution. We're going to build, first step, we're going to build a workflow that's going to make us a nice formatted, clickable phone number list. So we'll dig in and do that. A workflow is much like, you might think of it as a subroutine if you've done any other programming, but it's going to have inputs and outputs. So we're going to do our first one. These get namespaces as well. I'm going to call this put this in the namespace of utility. It's just a suggestion, doesn't have to be that way, but I'm going to call it a utility and select it. And then I'm going to try and keep up with myself here on my other screen. I'm going to call this the contact numbers formatted. contact phone numbers formatted workflow. And so having a descriptive name will be useful when we're trying to figure out how to consume it, how to get it. So it's got a name. It's in the type of the namespace of utility. And so workflows have three things: inputs and outputs, which are, again, like subroutines, inputs and outputs. And then in the middle, we have processes. What does it take to make that happen? I am going to switch on my other screen to make sure I don't forget any steps in the workflow here. So let's talk about inputs. The input that we have, our problem is we have a contact and we want to get all their phone numbers. So the input is going to be a contact. We could call it anything here, but we're going to give it the name of contact. And we'll add that as an input parameter. And we're going to say its type, not just a text type, we're going to say it's actually a contact. And this is useful because when we pass what we provide when we use this is an ID number, the ID number 3, it's automatically going to look up all the other stuff for us related that is part of the contact entity and make it available to us to use. So for testing purposes, I'm just going to say that we're going to focus on number 3. That keeps us from having to type it a bunch. And for an output, we are going to output something called contact phone HTML. This is going to be a nicely formatted HTML list that gives us, that we can put in somewhere and click on it and it'll just work. So we'll add that as a parameter. We don't have any output. We'll assign it a value before we're done, but those are inputs and outputs. Input is contact, output is contact phone HTML. So the first thing I want, so now we can focus on the process. And the first thing that I want to do, the output that we're going to do is going to be called result. And I am going to use an action. And I'm sorry, I clicked very quickly. So let's, if this is the first time you're doing this, when you click on the start button on the start indicator on the map, on the workflow, we have this add action type. And so we're going to do add action. We're going to pick a special thing called context inject data. This is like a let statement if you knew basic. But what we're going to do is provide a default result. I like to be descriptive in the titles of these things because when you save it, that's what shows up in the box, provide a default result. And so I'm double clicking and editing that. And so I'm going to create something called result and say this is every process, every workflow has to have a start, which was provided automatically. It also has to have an end. So I'm going to add an end event and put it here, leave some space to add some things as we go. But we have a start, an end, and one action. And then the output that we're doing, I am going to output the value of result. So result is something that I created here. We're creating result and giving it the value. This is the phone number list. And so we can save and test. And we have a default value that we provided for our input. So I can just click run. And so we see this is the phone number list 4. It hasn't done anything yet, but at least we proved that the outputs are working. So let's do something now. The input was a contact of type contacts, and we know that contacts have IDs and full names and things like that. So I am going to, instead of saying this is the phone number list for the name, so I'm going to use contact phone full name. Because we're providing, because we told that it was a type of entity, this is going to be able to resolve automatically. We don't have to read the record. It's read implicitly for us. So again, running it for number 3, this is the phone number list for John Abbott. And so it's substituting that in there automatically. If we just approve, we can also do contact ID at the name of, at the end of it, just so that we can see the contact ID. So when I run this now, we see the output is this phone number list for John Abbott, who is number 3. So we have it wired up and working. And that's, one of the techniques that I use when I'm developing a workflow is to kind of do it step by step so that I can test to see that things are working and then move on to the next thing. So we've got a default result, and I'm actually going to add one more thing to the end of it. I'm going to add an HTML break so that when this list is displayed in an HTML, it's going to include that. As go put it line by line as we put each phone number on top of it. So the next thing that we need to do is to get the phone numbers in a list item or in a list. And this is one of those areas that I'd hoped to show was new. We are in our old way, version 116, it's called load entities SQL. In the new way, it's going to be called something like create list SQL. But what we're doing is that we're going to get the phone numbers in a list. This is where our research comes in. So we can go back to our clipboard and find this thing where we did select from the contact phone numbers. This is the thing that returns contacts and phone numbers. And now we can adapt it. So this would do it just for John. It's tagged for contact ID 3. But we can convert this into something that's dynamic. And so what I'm going to do is say where the contact ID equals, and then SQL has this thing called a parameter. And so I've built a new parameter that gives us a place to pass information in. So the parameter name of contact ID, this thing here, we're going to give it the value that's coming from our input. So if it's 3, it will be substituted in here as a 3. If it's 1, it'll be substituted in as a 1. And what we're going to get out of it is something called a, we want to get we're going to get an entity out of it. And I'm going to call this the join list. You can call it what you want, but this join list is the thing we're going to be able to, for this list is going to create, if it were run for contact number 3, it's going to have 5 things in it, and we'll be able to loop over this entity. So that gets us the phone numbers in the list. And then the last steps that we're going to take, and this is where the fun happens, is that we want to loop through that. So that's a tool called execute on an entity list. And again, this probably, I think that might be subject of being renamed. So the thing that we're going to do here is to loop through the join list and build a result. And the entity name that we're working with, which we had a minute ago, is join list. So this is going to loop through join list. And then in this case, there's a behavior choice. This is the one that I would normally choose, and it just says update all tokens in the original context. What that means is anytime we change things, variables, context variables like result, that it's going to get stored in result and get updated. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to append to result as we go along. So now the question is, what are we going to do? And so let's kind of template this a little bit. We'll take it step by step as we did the last one. So we're going to use this same inject data to add the phone number to the result. And so result will get the same, the result that we already have, which is that initialized value, plus we're going to add the phone number from the list. Now I don't have it yet, so that's kind of a problem. So instead I'm going to just get use the ID from this thing. We'll get the phone number in a minute in another step, but this is the join list phone number ID. That's the ID that came from that join list. And so this will just only to demonstrate that this thing is working. So we're adding that, and then we're gonna I'm gonna add another action that will also manipulate the result. And this is going to be to add a line break. So result is going to be made equal to result plus a line break. Code to force it to the next line. So this thing is looping through all of our phone number IDs and going to produce some output. Let's see what it does so far. We're going to use our default value of 3. So we have John Abbott and then a bunch of blanks. We didn't get our IDs there, so that's something to look at. Make sure I did that right. So it's not the. Let's take a look at some SQL here. Go back to my research. And there it is on my clipboard. And so, yeah, we should have a phone number ID. So let's see if I can figure out why that didn't show up. So we're adding to the result the join list phone number ID. And then we're adding a break. Definition of insanity is trying the same thing and expecting a different result. I didn't get it. Okay. So I'm going to work and Jeff is trying to help me here. So let's see if I can. Okay, so I am at this point, because we're closing in on time, I'm going to cheat a little bit and show you what this looks like in the system that I had prepared. So, and kind of walk through all the steps so that you get to see them all without having to wait and watch through me developing it and debug it. So these are all the actions that are necessary to do the thing that we were talking about. So we have a join list. And so the steps are that we're going to read the phone number. So we use the read the phone number action and use the record ID that we're returning as the join list. That's going to get us the phone number record. The next step is that we need the type, because we're going to need to know, is it a work phone or what? So we are doing the read the type, read phone type action. And so we're going to provide the phone number type ID, and we're going to get out a thing called phone type and a list called phone type. And so now we can do all our steps to add that together. We are adding the result phone type first. That's going to be like work or mobile and a colon after it. And I'm doing these step by step. It makes it easy to rearrange and to see each thing, but this could be done in just one step instead of several. So the next thing that I'm doing is adding to the result, we're adding the phone number itself, and we're adding it in the HTML setup where there's an href, the TEL colon and phone number makes it dialable. So that's a clickable link. And then within the link, we'll have the phone number. And then whether or not it's preferred. So we have the phone number is preferred. I don't know. If the phone number is preferred is true, then we'll also add to the end of it the word preferred. And then finally the break. So the result is being built up step by step as it loops through these. And so if we were to test this, and in the same way, we're going to run it with a default value of 3, what we get is the work phone number and nicely formatted in HTML and says preferred, the mobile phone number for this person number 3, the fax phone number, work phone, another work phone number. So again, a nicely formatted HTML. And yep, everyone's helpful. Jerry has, I think Jerry has found my problem in my workflow. I think I did it wrong here. Yeah, there's right here. Instead of, the question is when you have I did syntax wrong. I didn't, in the data for an inject data, you need to specify the name of a thing, not the value of a thing. So I had brackets around this and it was doing result. So thank you, Jerry. I'm sure if I save this and test it now, we'll see the numbers appear in the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But again, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep with the one that I've already worked on. So this gives us the thing that we can, when we pass it in a number, it gives us the full HTML for whatever contact we pass into it. And then quickly, I'll cover the token. So I built up a new token. I'll do it here again, just as a, let's see, it's listed here as phone number list, but I'm going to just going to call it test so that we can see it happen. We're going to have, this is going to be the contact test token, and the definition of this thing is going to be to run our workflow. So we run a workflow and we pick that we want the get phone numbers formatted workflow, and the output field that we want is the contact phone HTML. And that's all it is. We've quickly built a token, and so I'm going to save it. Again, it's the test one. I'm going to put in the value of 3, and it outputs the value of the token here in our output. If we click render it as HTML, we see this nice phone number, the name, the phone number, the preferred. We could do some additional work to make that phone number look right on a country by country basis, but it'll work the way it is. And then in our final, let's show how you would consume that in our last two minutes. If we go to our app and look at contacts, we see our test data. And so we have John Abbott, and we can see the phone number showing up now here. The step that you didn't see, this is again how I prepared it already yesterday, but what you would do to make that happen is you would go into the listing, add in a computed field, and the computed field would have this token that we've created, and that token was it's already done, so I'm just going to open it up. The token is called contact phone number list. That's what I called it when I built it. We pass it in, and the ID of whatever row we're on is called ID. And so each time as this displays row by row, it will build a phone number list for the current ID, and then it displays it here. So I think I bit off a little bit more than I can chew and got lost in the middle, but thanks to everyone for helping out. Any questions about what I've covered? And if you're thinking of any, I will just add that, again, we're thinking that we'll be returning to this topic again next week. Maybe I'll get a little redemption on having built that token outright. And then there's some automation we're going to do, automatically send some emails, and then start tackling the front end stuff as well. So more to come if it's next week or the weeks to come. And yeah, thanks Jerry for the encouragement. Yeah, so this is a live TV show we put on every week, and most of the time it turns out right, but here we go. All right, Bogdan, you want to close us out, get me out of this?
Sure, Dale. Yes, it was great seeing this next phase of replacing the legacy system, and I'm looking forward to see the next one as well. Especially, I think this topic on creating the front-end UI, it's challenging, and it's something that comes up often with our customers. So thanks again for putting this in place. Thanks again, everyone, for being here, for attending. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see each other again next week, same day, same hour. Bye, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.